நீங்கள் பார்த்து கொண்டிருப்பது உங்கள் RSKV யூடியூப் சேனல்.
Income Tax Inspectors Exam 2014 Paper 3 Allied Laws. When a trust is created, beneficiaries are entitled to transfer their beneficial interest through a proper contract. Mr. Piyush, an insane person, seeks to transfer his beneficial interest to Garima. Select the correct statement. Piyush cannot transfer his beneficial interest at all. A has made a will in respect of his immovable properties, but the will does not make any mention of his movable properties. On his death, he will be deemed to have died intestate in respect of his movable property. Where will the registrar keep the sealed cover for deposit of wills? Fireproof box. Notwithstanding anything in the Official Secrets Act 1923 or any of the exemptions permissible in accordance with subsection 1 of section 8 of RTA Act 2005, a public authority may allow access to information if public interest is in disclosure outweighs the harm to the protected interest. After partition by a registered deed, reunion can take place by oral agreement. A and B are partners. A dies having bequeathed all his property to B in trust for Z and has appointed B his sole executor. B, instead of winding up the affairs of the partnership, retains all the assets in the business. B is answerable to Z for the improper movement of A's assets. A gives a gift to 5 lakh rupees to B, reserving to himself, with B's assent, the right to take back at pleasure rupees 1 lakh out of total gift. Please specify whether the gift is valid. The gift is valid for rupees 4 lakh but is void with reference to rupees 1 lakh which continue to belong to A. The Central Public Information Officer or State Public Information Officer may reject request for information where providing access would infringe copyright subsisting in a person other than the state. Under Mitakshara law, the property of the undivided Hindu family has to be divided as agreed. In case this trustee is guilty of unreasonable delay in investing trust money in accordance with the laid down manner of the Indian Trust Act 1882, he will have to deposit the interest to the beneficiary. Rule 2 under Section 10 of the Hindu Succession Act 1956, per capita rule. The three main sources of Hindu law are the Shruti, the Smriti and custom. A decree may be executed A. by the court which passed the decree, B. by any other court to which a decree has been sent for execution. Both A and B are correct. According to Section 18C of the Registration Act 1908, the registration of wills is optional. This statement is true. Depends on the value of the property bequeathed. Section 7 of the Indian Partnership Act deals with general duties of partners. Community of ownership in a Mitakshara co-partnery in term of individual ownership can be expressed as right by birth and right of survivorship. A conveys property to B in trust to apply the profits for the conduct of an illegal strike. The trust is void. In Indian Succession Act, a district judge means judge of the principal civil court of original jurisdiction. Which of the following properties are not liable to attachment and sale in execution of decree? A. Book of accounts. B. Sums payable under a policy of insurance on the life of the judgment debtor. C. Compulsory deposits under the Provident Fund Act. D. All the above. Answer D. All the above. Under Mitakshara School of Hindu Law, member of HUF can be any male member of the family. Section 60 of the Civil Procedure Code provides for property liable to attachment and sale in execution of decree. Who are the persons for whose examination commission may issue? Any person resident beyond the local limits of its jurisdiction. B. Any person who is about to leave such limits before the date on which he is required to be examined in court. C. Any person in the service of government who cannot, in the opinion of the court, attend without detriment to public service. D. All of the above. Answer all of the above. Order 5 of the Civil Procedure Code deals with issue and service of summons. For purpose of the Transfer of Property Act, a suit or proceeding shall be deemed to commence from A. The date of the presentation of the plaint. B. The institution of the proceedings in a court of competent jurisdiction. Both A and B. Privilege can be made by a soldier engaged in actual warfare. Under the provision of Transfer of Property Act, an easement cannot be transferred apart from the dominant heritage. The statement is true. Who is a person entitled to present a will before any registrar or sub-registrar for registration? Executor of the will. Domicile of a minor whose father has died during his minority is deceased father's last domicile. Where a request has been rejected under subsections 1 of section 7, the Central Public Information Officer or State Public Information Officer, as the case may be, need not communicate to the person making the request the correct format in which the appeal can be filed before the appellate authority. A creates a trust and appoints B as the trustee. The trust deed states that a bulk of the property has to be divided amongst the children of A. This is an invalid trust because the directions are unclear. Which of the following section of RTI Act 2005 contains provisions relating to exemptions? Section 8. A. Governed by Mitakshara law, inherits certain property from his father X. A has a son B, a grandson C, two great-grandsons D and D1, and a great-great-great-grandson E by D1. Suppose B dies, the co-personary would now consist of A, C, D and D1. A party applying for the summons shall pay for towards calling the summons within a period of not later than dash days, 7 days. Saprati Banda or obstructed heritage is acquired by the members of the HUF by order of court. In the absence of contract or local law or usage to the contrary, a lease of immovable property for agricultural or manufacturing purposes shall be deemed to be leased from a year to year terminable on the part of either lessor or lessee by dash months notice, 6 months notice. Section 85 of the Indian Trust Act speaks of unlawful purpose. When the trust property consists of money which cannot be applied immediately or at an early date for the purposes of the trust is bound to invest in promissory notes, debentures, stock or other securities of the central government. Section 55 of Transfer of Property Act defines rights and liabilities of the buyer and seller. Which of the following is correct with respect to the doctrine of blending of properties under Mitakshara law? A. Self-acquired property of a co-partner is voluntarily thrown into the common stock. B. There has to be a clear intention of the co-partners to waive his separate rights. C. The mere failure of a co-partner to keep separate accounts of the income from the separate property would not make it part of the HUF property. D. All of the above. Answer D. All of the above. Under RTA Act 2005, the persons making the request for the information shall be provided the information free of charge when the person is below poverty line as may be determined by the appropriate government. The public authority fails to comply with the time limit specified in subsection 1 of section 7. C. Inspection of the record is made for 45 minutes or less. Answer all of the above. The Mitakshara school prevails throughout India except Bengal. If an application is received by the court to examine a witness not within India, the court may issue commission and letter of request. Section 20A has been inserted by Section 3 of the Indian Trust Amendment Act 1916, 1 of 1916. The doctrine of part performance as given in Section 53A of Transfer of Property Act is an equitable right and available in defense. An unprivileged will or codicil is revoked by marriage, another will or codicil, a declaration to revoke the earlier will. All of the above is the answer. Under RTA Act 2005, where the information is to be provided on payment of any further fee towards cost of providing the information, the Central Public Information Officer shall send an intimation to the person making the request for information about the cost along with the calculation, and the period between dispatch of intimation and payment shall be excluded from the period of 30 days. Under the Transfer of Property Act, the term attested means attested by 3 or more witnesses. If an information has been sought by an applicant in a certain form, then in such case, the Central Public Information Officer CPIO will provide the information in the form in which it is sought unless it would disproportionately divert the resources of the CPIO or would be detrimental to the safety of preservation of the record in question. For seizure of property in a dwelling house, the Code of Civil Procedure authorizes entry in such house at during the period between sunrise and sunset, where the persons on or to whom any notice or tender is to be served or made under Chapter 4 of Transfer of Property Act does not reside in the district in which the mortgaged property is situated. Then, service of notice or tender on an agent holding a general power of attorney from such person shall be deemed sufficient. Then, service of notice or tender on an agent otherwise duly authorized to accept such services or tender shall be deemed sufficient. Both are correct. Co-partnership property can be divided among co-partners. Review is maintainable when an appeal is provided but no appeal is preferred. B. When no appeal is approved. Both A and B are correct. Who has to bear the onus burden of proof through the appeals process under the RTA Act 2005? Public Information Officer. When the intestate has left a widow and also lineal descendants, widow would get following share in all properties, 1/3. A will stands revoked. A will stands revoked when, in all the above circumstances, A. It is destroyed by the person making the will. B. The person making the will gets married. C. Another will is made revoking the earlier one. All the three are correct. What are the sections whose provisions are presumed to have been complied with under Section 60 for the certificate of registration under the Indian Registration Act 1908, Section 34, 35, 58 and 59. Under Registration Act 1908, the words purport or operate in Section 17, 1b refers to immediate intention of the instrument. A trust is an obligation annexed to the ownership of property for the benefit of another person, which is false. On receipt of an application under RTA Act 2005, the Public Information Officer is required to give opportunities of personal bearing in every case. As per the provision of the Registration Act 1908, a composition deed need not be registered. According to Section 4(1)(b) of the RTA Act 2005, the information published by a public authority has to be updated every year. A trust deed contains the directions for the trustee to dispose of certain property through public auction. The trustee can only dispose of the property through a public auction. For acquiring domicile in India, a person has to be a resident in India for 1 year. Transfer of property has been defined under which section of the Transfer of Property Act? Section 5. A trust involving immovable property need not be declared by a non-testamentary instrument, has to be declared orally, needs to be signed by the beneficiaries. Answer: none of the above. A person is said to be agnate of the deceased if the two are related by blood or adoption, wholly through the male. An executor of his own wrong is answerable to rightful executor, B. rightful administrator, C. any creditor or legatee to the deceased. D. Answer: all of the above. In a case of one and the same decree, the attachment of salary can continue for a total period of 24 months. The HUF will continue to be in existence till HF property is in existence. A has given gift of rupees 75 as interest in immovable property. What will be the effect under Indian Registration Act 1908? Registration is compulsory. The principle of lispendens, LISPENDENS, embodied in Section 52 of the Transfer of Property Act, pertains to bona fide purchase, B. public policy, C. auction sale, D. none of the above. Answer: D. none of the above. An executor has to present an inventory containing full estimates of the property to the court within dash from the grant of probate or letter of administration 6 months. The court may issue a commission to examine any person resident within its jurisdiction, B. to make a partition of a property in its jurisdiction, C. to make a local investigation, D. Answer: all of the above. Service of summons under Sub-Rule 3 of Rule 9 of Civil Procedure Code shall be made at the expense of the plaintiff. When did RTA Act come in the force in India? 12th October 2005. The objection of Section 47 of the Registration Act, the objective of Section 47 of the Registration Act 1908 is to decide which of the two or more registered instruments in respect of the same property is to have effect. Mr. A, Director of Messrs. ABC Limited, enters into a lease agreement with lessor for a building to be used for the business of the company. For this, he received a commission income from lessor in his personal name. The ultimate beneficiary for the commission income so earned is Messrs. ABC Limited. Section 17 of 1 of the Registration Act applies to lease for any term exceeding 1 year, lease from year to year, lease reserving an yearly rent. D. all of the above. Answer: D. all of the above. The maximum amount of fine that can be imposed by a court on a witness who fails to appear or fails to satisfy the court is rupees 500. Which of the following is correct under Metakshara law? The Karta of a HUF can make a gift for certain approved purpose and within a reasonable limit. In Transfer of Property Act, exception to the general term that property of any kind may be transferred has been mentioned in which section? Section 6. As per Section 108 of the Transfer of Property Act, which of the following rights and liabilities of the lessor are correct? 1. The lessor is bound to disclose to the lessee any material defect in the property with reference to its intended use, of which the former is and the latter is not aware, and which the latter could not with ordinary care discover. The lessor shall be deemed to contract with the lessee that if the latter pays the rent reserved by the lease and performs the contract binding on the lessee, he may hold the property during the time limited by lease without interruption. Both are correct. Probate shall be granted to any person appointed by court. If the donee dies before acceptance, the gift is void. Section 78 of Indian Trust Act deals with revocation of trust. Which of the statements under Section 11 of the RTA Act 2005 is not correct? The public authority would decide the matter within 60 days of the application in writing. In a trust deed, the person who requires or declares the confidence is called author of the trust. Which of the following statement is correct? As per RTA Act 2005, a public authority may allow access to information which is exempt from disclosure under Section 8(1) of the RTA Act if public interest in disclosure outweighs the harm to protected interest. A court may make an order requiring the officer in charge of the prison to produce a person before the court to give evidence if the distance from the prison to the court house is not more than kilometers, 25 kilometers. Same property is mortgaged by mortgage deed to two persons, A and B, with two different mortgage deeds. First mortgage deed was executed on 1/4/2011 but registered on 15th July 2011. Second mortgage deed was executed on 15th April 2011 but registered on 15th June 2011, from which date mortgage deed will operate under Section 47 of the Indian Registration Act 1/4/2011. The liability of a partner in is unlimited. Withdrawal of will deposited with registrar by the testator is allowed under Section Dash of the Registration Act 1908, Section 44. Codicil means an instrument in relation to will, where a third party has been given an opportunity to make representation. The Public Information Officer is required under the RTA Act 2005 to take decision as to whether or not to disclose the information within 40 days after receipt of the request. How many types of mortgages are defined in Section 58 of the Transfer of Property Act? 6. A registered document shall operate from the first day of the month immediately succeeding the month of its registration. Order 1919 of the Civil Procedure Code deals with affidavits. According to the provision of Indian Succession Act 1925, an Indian Christian means a Christian who is a native of India or who claims to be unmixed Asiatic descent. Which section of the Registration Act 1908 contains provisions to save certain enactments and power of courts? 46.